Welcome to the deep dive. If you need a shortcut to really getting to grips with the complex world of state education quality, you are definitely in the right place today.
Yes, today we're doing something pretty critical, I think. We're diving deep into the core framework used for evaluating state-funded schools here. We've basically taken the entire Schools Inspection Toolkit,
That's the big one, the blueprint.
exactly, the blueprint for defining success, and we've tried to boil it down, distill it to the absolute non-negotiable criteria.
Right. And our mission here, it's pretty straightforward, but, well, crucial, isn't it? We want to understand the specific drivers of quality education in this system. What exactly defines a successful, high-quality school?
And crucially, what specific groups of pupils really drive that whole evaluation process? Because as you dig into the source material, one thing becomes crystal clear.
Which is?
The whole framework, I mean, everything, curriculum design, leadership checks, you name it, it's all driven by this relentless focus on inclusion and equity.
So it's not just about pulling up the average score across the board.
Right.
It's more fundamental.
Precisely. It's about lifting the floor, as you said. The toolkit consistently demands high standards and, crucially, effective support for 4 specific vulnerable groups. Let me list them.
Okay.
You've got disadvantaged pupils, pupils with special educational needs or disabilities, SEND, as it's known.
Right, send.
Then pupils who are known to, or were previously known to, children's social care. And finally, any pupils facing other significant barriers, maybe to learning or their well-being. If the support for these groups isn't up to scratch,
Then the whole thing can fall down.
the whole evaluation risks failure. It's that central.
Okay, wow. So let's unpack this then. Maybe start with the mechanics. How inspectors actually gather the evidence they need. Because you hear horror stories about paperwork mountains.
Yes. This is probably the most famous and important nugget in the whole document, actually. The mandate is really clear. Evidence collection must be proportionate.
Proportionate.
Meaning, the evaluation focuses entirely on the impact of the systems schools already have, not, the systems themselves just for show.
So they're looking for real, functional quality, not just ticking boxes for compliance.
Exactly that. Inspectors get most of their evidence firsthand through, professional chats, watching normal day-to-day stuff happening, often sitting down with school leaders.
Okay.
And they explicitly, state leaders should not produce documents just for the inspection. They only need to see what's required by law anyway, or what the school uses normally.
That's a huge relief, I imagine, for leaders listening. It's about preventing unnecessary workload.
Definitely. It's a deliberate effort to keep the focus on teaching and leading, not just, admin.
Okay, that's key. So if evidence gathering is about proportionate process, let's shift to that non-negotiable baseline you mentioned. Safeguarding. This isn't just about locked gates and visitor badges, is it?
Oh, not at all. Safeguarding is seen as a whole school thing. It's about fostering an open, positive culture and, critically, embedding an attitude of, it could happen here.
So constant vigilance.
Constant vigilance, exactly, against maltreatment, harm, whether it's happening in school, at home, or increasingly online.
And that vigilance has to look outwards too, presumably.
It does, yeah. They look really closely at how effectively the school works with external agencies, safeguarding partners, and every single member of staff needs to be well-trained and feel empowered to speak up if they see something.
And leaders need to listen.
Leaders absolutely need to be receptive to challenge, learn from incidents, always reviewing their practices.
I thought the specific focus on child-on-child violence was quite revealing. That goes way beyond just playground pushing.
It absolutely does. It really elevates the level of awareness required. The criteria explicitly cover leaders' responsibilities for things like physical assault, sexual violence, harassment, bullying, and, maybe most sensitively, domestic abuse within pupils' own relationships.
Teenage relationship abuse.
Yes, that's often what it's called. Staff awareness and, crucially, a rapid, effective response. They're mandatory.
That's a serious responsibility. And it leads us to the not met threshold for safeguarding. What tips a school into failure on this?
Well, connecting back to the core idea, safeguarding is likely to be judged not met if there are serious, widespread failures. Things that result in pupils actually being unsafe.
Right, the obvious stuff.
Yes, but what's often missed is the accountability part. If leaders aren't open to challenge, if they brush things under the carpet, or if they can't properly account for the safety of kids who are persistently absent, or maybe attending some kind of alternative provision that isn't monitored.
So even if there hasn't been a major incident yet.
Exactly. Those failures in accountability can also trigger that not met judgment.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? The duty of care extends well beyond the school gates. Okay, so if safeguarding is the fundamental baseline of safety, that safety then allows the school to focus properly on the core mission of inclusion.
Precisely. And the toolkit defines successful inclusion really entirely by how well leaders identify and support those 4 key vulnerable groups we talked about.
The disadvantaged, SEND, social care links, other barriers.
Those ones. But the starting point for doing that well, it might surprise some people.
Oh, gone.
The document strongly suggests that the most effective inclusion strategy actually begins with everyday, high-quality, inclusive teaching for everyone.
So getting the main classroom practice right in the first place.
Exactly. The better the universal teaching is, the less need there is later for lots of individual adaptations or intensive catch-up. It demands excellence right from the start.
So it's proactive, built in, not just relying on sticking plasters later on. How does that play out for supporting pupils with SEND then, especially with the graduated approach they talk about?
Right, the graduated approach. That's basically the continuous cycle. You plan support, you put it into action, you review how it's going, you reassess, you tweak it.
So it's dynamic.
Very dynamic. Strategies have to evolve, be constantly monitored for effectiveness. And similarly, any specific funding, like the pupil premium money for disadvantaged kids, those strategies must be explicitly based on solid evidence of what actually works to close those gaps. No, just, hoping for the best.
And the person driving a lot of this SEND work, the Donna and Carlos, Special Educational Needs Coordinator, what kind of authority do they need? Are they just shuffling paperwork?
Oh, far from it. The requirement is really clear on this. The qualified SENCO must have enough clout, enough authority within the leadership team.
Real clout.
Yes, real clout, to lead whole school improvement for pupils with SEND. They're not just administrators. They are absolutely central to strategic leadership. It really underlines the priority the toolkit gives to SEND.
That makes sense. And that focus on strategic intent, that flows nicely into evaluating the curriculum itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They look at intent, the ambition, breadth, balance, how it's sequenced, and then implementation, how well it's actually taught.
Correct. And the core of that intent, while needing to be ambitious, absolutely must prioritize securing really strong foundations, especially early on.
Foundations like?
Communication, language, reading, writing, maths, absolutely critical in early years and primary. And for reading specifically, the expectation is crystal clear. Use systematic synthetic phonics.
It's interesting they call out one specific teaching method like that, systematic synthetic phonics, in such a high-level document. Why that one?
Well, simply put, the evidence base is just so strong. It's mandated because it's been proven again and again to be the most effective way to get the vast majority of young children decoding words and becoming fluent readers.
So where the science is clear, they make it non-negotiable.
Pretty much. The toolkit doesn't often prescribe specific teaching methods, but in cases like phonics where the evidence is overwhelming, it becomes a foundational expectation for leader success.
Okay, so leaders set this ambitious curriculum, grounded in phonics for reading. Then they have to make sure it's taught well. How does a leader check that teachers have the right expertise without, creating that very bureaucracy and workload the toolkit warns against?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's where expert leadership really comes in. Leaders are required to ensure teachers have expert knowledge of the curriculum and their subjects.
But how do they show that?
The evaluation expects leaders to demonstrate they have a high-quality professional development program, one that's genuinely based on evidence, focused on building collective expertise across the staff.
So it's strategic investment, not just checking boxes in training sessions.
Exactly. It's about strategically investing in staff knowledge so the teaching is just intrinsically better, which then reduces the need for constant checking and fixing later on.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift then to measuring the actual impact of all this achievement. This is where, leaders often feel huge pressure to produce endless spreadsheets of internal data. But you mentioned a caveat here.
A massive caveat, yes. If we connect this back to that idea of reducing bureaucracy, achievement is judged on the actual impact. Do pupils, from whatever their starting point was, genuinely know more, remember more, and can they do more?
How do they assess that then, without drowning in data?
Through conversations with pupils, looking at their work over time, observing lessons, those first-hand methods.
What data do inspectors look at?
Okay, this is the crucial data point. They primarily use the published, validated data, national tests, exam results, but only as a starting point for conversation.
Not the final word.
Definitely not. And they explicitly will not review the school's internal day-to-day tracking data. They also have to be really mindful that for small groups of pupils or specific cohorts like some with SEND, that published data can bounce around a lot or might not even be available.
So the focus is more qualitative.
It's on the narrative of impact. Are achievement gaps actually closing? Is that foundational knowledge, reading fluency, writing skills, maths, know-how really secure by the time pupils move on to the next stage?
Got it. Okay, moving on to the school climate, behavior, and attendance. The criteria seem to look for that calm, orderly, respectful environment. Consistency seems key.
Consistency and fairness, absolutely paramount. And on attendance, leaders have to prioritize improving it, both overall attendance and punctuality across the whole school, but with a laser focus on those kids who are persistently or severely absent.
Is there a target?
The explicit goal is to get back to or even exceed pre-pandemic levels, or at least match national averages as quickly as possible.
And behavior isn't just about being quiet in corridors, is it? It has to tackle modern issues.
Oh, absolutely. The environment needs staff to explicitly teach and model the behavior they expect. And crucially, it must not tolerate bullying, any unlawful discrimination, harassment, including sexual harassment or violence.
Whether it's online or offline.
Both. And that includes actively tackling prejudice-motivated bullying, based on race, SEND status, sexual orientation, religion, that kind of thing. It has to be proactively addressed.
Okay. Finally, let's look at the more holistic side and the oversight, leadership, and governance. First up, personal development. How does this toolkit define a sort of well-rounded student who's ready for life beyond school?
Well, it defines it through needing a structured, coherent program, part taught lessons, part wider opportunities. Key bits include promoting SMSE development.
Spiritual, moral, social, and cultural.
That's the one. Essential for developing thoughtful citizens.
And preparing them for life in Britain specifically.
Yes, the program has to explicitly develop pupils' understanding of what they call the fundamental British values. Things like democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and mutual respect and tolerance for different faiths and beliefs. Plus, building confidence and resilience for good mental health.
And protecting them from risks.
Critically important. Students must be taught how to recognize risks, both online and offline. Things like radicalization, criminal or sexual exploitation, drugs, gangs.
All the tough stuff.
All the tough stuff. And for older students, secondary and post-16, this absolutely includes impartial careers advice, meeting standards like the Gatsby benchmarks.
Careers guidance framework.
Exactly. Making sure every student gets quality guidance, work-related learning, maybe industry placements, so they're genuinely ready for whatever comes next. More education, a job, training.
Okay. And pulling all this incredibly complex work together requires effective leadership. What does the toolkit demand from school leaders and, importantly, the governing body?
Well, leaders obviously need that clear, ambitious vision, but the governors or trustees, their role is crucial. They need to effectively support leaders, yes, but maybe more importantly, challenge them.
Challenge them on what specifically?
They're held accountable for really understanding the impact of the school's strategy, especially on those 4 key vulnerable groups we keep coming back to. They have to satisfy themselves that leaders are painting an accurate picture and are focusing on the right things.
How does that challenge translate into practice? Especially thinking about staff welfare, which you mentioned earlier regarding workload.
The toolkit is very specific here. The responsible body, the governors or trustees, must ensure that leaders are properly considering staff well-being and workload.
They have to push back.
They have to push back if they see evidence that workload is unmanageable, or if unnecessary burdens are being placed on staff, especially if it takes away from teaching and learning. That accountability loop requires governors to check that professional development is actually effective, that it builds collective expertise, and isn't just, another item on a meeting agenda.
Wow. This has been a really thorough breakdown, a genuine deep dive into this blueprint for quality. So, to sum up, if I've got this right, the entire document, it just focuses relentlessly on inclusion, on equity.
Relentlessly is the word. Every single element, from how you design the curriculum sequence to what data you look at for achievement, it's all featured through this lens of maximizing outcomes for the most vulnerable kids.
It demands leadership that's strategic, reflective,
and constantly open to challenge both internally and externally. It's a framework that's measuring the intent, the implementation, and above all, the impact. ensuring, hopefully, that the most effective leaders achieve what the document calls a transformational impact on those key groups.
That transformational impact, that's the goal. Okay, so we'll leave you, our listener, with this final thought to ponder. Considering how deeply an inspection looks into really nuanced areas like how child-on-child violence is handled, the actual structural power of the SELACAN, that mandatory governor oversight of staff workload, one area, perhaps one that often gets overlooked in the sheer daily pressure of running a school, do you think has the single greatest long-term transformational impact on a student's ultimate readiness for adulthood?
Something to mull over. Thanks very much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thank you. We'll catch you next time.